This is one of the many white painted cabinets we've been doing recently. This is the top piece of an entertainment center. The whole thing is 8 feet by 8 feet. And we have lots of shelves. There's a bunch. And there's a bunch more. And so we've been spraying in this little room, and as you can see, there is overspray everywhere. Got a little exhaust fan in the ceiling, which has managed to destroy the bearings by the particulates, and the whole place is just absolutely covered in overspray. So, a little shop improvement project here. So the inside of the shop is all covered in sheets of 1/2-inch plywood. So I pulled one of the sheets off and moved some electrical service and cut an opening to the outside using a little fine reciprocating saw, and installed a little louver. And I have a Dayton fan that will push air, and it's one of those where the motor sits outside. Everything's pretty well aligned. Need to double check everything for tightness, but run into an issue here. So the airflow, the fan is engineered so the airflow goes this way, and my plan was to mount this flange on the wall, and so that's why we did the cutout. And as you can see, the fan and the motor overhang the flange by a couple of inches, and that has to do with the size of this particular motor and the size of the length of the tube and how it's set up with the pulleys. So this is basically not going to work unless I mount the motor through the wall plate, which I really don't want to do. So that's much better because the pulleys are lined up now, and the pulley is almost fully seated on the shaft. You can see where the cutout is now goes around the little bit of motor housing, and when we cut those studs off a little bit, now it's flush up against, which allows us to move the motor over and seat the pulley better. So I think we are good. All we have to do now is weld the two flanges together to give us that clearance, and we're going to do that in a couple of days. A friend of ours is going to weld that together for us. It would also be pretty workable to basically have the fan shroud for the motor penetrate that wall plate, and I'll seal it up so from below so the paint spray doesn't get up in there, and I'm going to make it big enough that it will be able to access air for cooling. And if it doesn't work, I can just put a piece of plywood over the opening and go back to what was plan A. This is now plan A. So I'm going to use a little fine reciprocating vibrating saw, and I'll show you that in a minute. As a guide to the saw, I'm just going to tack up a little strip of wood as a little fence to back the saw. So I'm just using a pin nailer to attach these temporarily. Okay, so there's the opening through the wall plate for the motor, and I made it, as I said, a little bit bigger so it'd be able to get some air supply around. And using the fences, I got a fairly straight cut with that little vibrating saw. And so now, and I sized it and located it so it is just above that 1.5 by 2 inch piece of poplar that we screwed into there as a support for the flange. So we'll see how this works out. So I think that that's pretty good. There's the flange should go right up in there, and you can see that it has just about the right amount of clearance. We may drop it down a little bit, so I'm going to move it up close, and as you can see, it's right on the edge of the ply, so we don't want it to come off there. It looks a little funky. You can see it's pretty well lined up, and we need to put the wiring plate on before we tuck it in there, because you're not going to have access to the back screw for the plate. So, but I think it's ready. I've got some lag screws to mount the flange to the plywood and the bracing, and so we'll do that and get the lift out of the way and plug it in and see if it works. So it is mounted and stable, and the motor works. Unfortunately, it's running the wrong way, so the manufacturer's instructions on the motor say that if that happens, you need to switch out a couple wires. So that's what we're going to do. Pull that box apart now that it's in, which will make it be a little difficult, but so good news is everything works so far, just the wrong way. We have switched the black and red leads in the mass of wires in that little box. Let's see what happens. Here's a quick shot of the tube axial fan with the wiring in place. I still don't have the switch done, but and the shroud that goes over the pulleys, and makes quite a racket. We made the connections and managed to fit all the wires in this box. Hopefully they're still all connected, so we'll find out. Yay. So, I'm not going to have the little paddle switch on because I don't see a need for an emergency stop in this situation, because these are intended for like table saws, or can be used for table saws and router tables, etc. But I don't see that need here. So, I am certainly no electrician, and but just wanted to show how I could kind of cobble this together, make it work. So anyway, there you go.